December 22, 2011, Richmond, Virginia. It was a cold, somber winter's day. Sarah Preston, a 56-year-old mother, wife, and nurse, made her way to the quiet, tranquil Oakwood Cemetery, nestled off 9 Mile Road. It was a place where grief met stillness, where families came to remember lost loved ones. Sarah wasn't visiting just any grave. She was visiting the resting place of her only son, Daniel Preston. Daniel had been murdered a year and a half earlier. He was just 22 when his life was tragically cut short in a senseless act of violence. He had been sitting in his car, parked by a streetlight on Cybele Road in Henrico, when someone approached and shot him in cold blood. Sarah had carried the weight of her son's death with her every day. The ache of his absence was a constant, gnawing presence that she could never escape. Her son had been a kind-hearted, promising young man with his whole life ahead of him. He had dreams of becoming an architect, of building things that would last long after he was gone. But all of that was taken from him in an instant, just because of a chance encounter with someone who thought violence was the answer. The memory of his smile, his laugh, the way he called her mom in a way only he could, it was all that Sarah had left. On this particular day, 3 days before Christmas, Sarah wanted to honor her son in the only way she knew how, by visiting his grave. It was a ritual for her now. Every month, every holiday, she would visit him, take flowers, and simply sit in silence. She would talk to him, even though she knew he couldn't answer back. She would tell him about the things happening in her life, about how much she missed him, about the world that continued to move on without him. That day, like every other, Sarah drove her black Acura to the cemetery, parked near the rows of headstones, and sat by Daniel's grave. She laid down fresh roses, her tears mixing with the cold winter air as she whispered a prayer. For a moment, the world seemed still. It was just her, the memory of Daniel, and the quiet peace of the cemetery. But as Sarah left, she had no idea that her world was about to shatter once again. As she drove down 9 Mile Road, nearing the intersection of Mechanicsville Turnpike, the sound of gunfire shattered the quiet. In a flash, bullets tore through the side of her car, shattering the windows, and Sarah screamed in pain and confusion. She tried to regain control of the car, but it was too late. The steering wheel slipped from her hands, and the black Acura careened into a nearby street, slamming into a mailbox and then crashing into a tree. The last thing Sarah Preston saw was the blinding pain in her chest and the blood that began to pool beneath her, the life draining from her body in the very same way her son's had. When first responders arrived, they found her slumped over the wheel. The street was eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of passing cars. But there was no sign of the shooter. No witnesses. No leads. The police investigation revealed that Sarah had been shot multiple times, the bullets targeting her body with deadly precision. The whole thing seemed senseless, incomprehensible. Here was a woman who had lost her only son to violence just over a year ago. She was simply trying to keep his memory alive, honoring him at his gravesite, and now her life had been snatched away in the same brutal way. And yet, when the police investigated the case, there was no connection between Sarah's murder and Daniel's. They ruled it out as random, senseless violence. But for anyone who knew Sarah, it felt far too coincidental. How could one family suffer so much pain? How could they lose 2 beloved members, in such brutal, violent ways, with no answers? The investigation turned up few leads. Police interviewed several potential suspects, but no one could provide any solid answers. Was Sarah targeted because of something in her past? Was it someone connected to Daniel's death? Or was this just another case of random violence in a city riddled with crime? The authorities were stumped. And so, as days turned to weeks and weeks turned to months, the case grew cold. The public slowly moved on, and the story faded into the background. But not for Sarah's family. Not for her grieving husband, Daniel's younger sister, and all those who knew her. They were left with nothing but questions, haunted by the image of a woman who had tried so hard to honor her son, only to be brutally taken from them, too. The silence of justice. As the years passed, the grief never faded. The questions never stopped. Who would do such a thing? Why target Sarah Preston? Why shoot her down on a quiet street, after she had already suffered the loss of her son? Was there something more to her murder? something hidden just beneath the surface that no one had yet uncovered. Some of Sarah's friends began to wonder if they were missing something. Could it have been a random act of violence? Could it have been someone with a vendetta against her family? Maybe it was someone who knew Daniel's past, someone who knew that Sarah was vulnerable and alone. The questions mounted, and the answers seemed as elusive as ever. In the years since, Sarah's family has never stopped searching for answers. They hold out hope that one day, they'll get the justice they deserve. That someone, somewhere, will come forward with the information that will finally solve the case. But until then, they remain in the shadows of uncertainty, mourning not only the loss of Sarah but the absence of closure that haunts their every day. A family torn apart. 2 lives taken. A mother and a son, both victims of violence. 2 murders. One family forever scarred by grief, torn apart by the very thing that had taken their loved ones from them. And to this day, both cases remain unsolved. The families of Sarah Preston and Daniel Preston are left to wonder, to hope, and to grieve. Will they ever find peace? Will anyone ever be held accountable for the violence that tore their world apart? Until then, Sarah's family continues to hold on to the memories of her, a devoted mother, wife, and nurse, and of Daniel, a young man with a bright future, both taken too soon. If you have any information regarding Sarah Preston's murder, please contact the Richmond Police Department at 804-555-XXXX. Every tip, no matter how small, could bring them one step closer to the truth.